As you know, today's event is called the Mayor's Event. Delta's in New York City. And I'm so glad that our mayor, Mayor Michael R. Bloomberg, is here with us today. Mayor Bloomberg has been an innovator, a change maker, has tackled and championed issues of great importance that resonate with Delta Sigma Theta, such as education and public health. He has been the leading voice, and more importantly, the voice of reason on gun control. I know you join me in cheering Mayor Bloomberg on each and every time that he's on Morning Joe, when he's on Meet the Press, representing, telling the facts about violence and what needs to be done in this country to reduce it. With that being said, please join me in welcoming our host, the Mayor of the City of New York, Michael Bloomberg.
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you. Thank you. Please sit. I should thank you for inviting me. I've never seen so many women in red before. Happy Founders Day. Congratulations on 100 years. It has been a great century. I think you can testify to that. In 1913, there were 150,000 people that visited the newly opened Grand Central Terminal. Global trade was valued in those days at $38 billion, and 22 women who believed that public service was more important than popularity joined a march to help women win the right to vote. Now here we are 100 years later, 2013. 82 million people will travel through Grand Central. World trade is valued at nearly $27 trillion. And the sisterhood, whose 22 women founded, now has more than 300,000 members in chapters around the globe. And President Cynthia Butler McIntyre, members of the Executive Committee and the Executive Board, round of applause for them. And the distinguished dynamic divas of Delta Sigma Theta. Boy, this is an easy crowd to get going. It is my honor to welcome you to New York City. Now, as the president of my college fraternity, many, many years ago, I can really appreciate a great sorority. I just wish back then we had sororities. And I'm willing to bet your sorority parties aren't anything like the ones where I went to school, and that's probably a good thing. But being with you today really is one of the highlights of the new year. The other happened at midnight on New Year's Eve, with me standing on the stage in the middle of Times Square, high kicking with the Rockettes. I hate to admit it, but I couldn't get my leg up as high as they could get theirs. Even so, it was a dream come true. The year before, I was up on the stage and got kissed by Lady Gaga. This time, there were 10 Rockettes up, and they came over 2 at a time and kissed me on both cheeks. It was a picture that you can rest assured I will have at home, and you can rest assured my girlfriend won't like. Seriously, New York is a city not only of dreamers, but it really is a city of doers as well. New York knows that a plan is only as good as the hard work of those who will see it through, and that's a principle of Delta Sigma Theta that they really do know well. From your earliest days, you've been right there in the fight for women's rights. You have been there marching and organizing in the struggle for civil rights, and you've been there helping to lead the charge for greater opportunity so that every child has the chance to get a good education and then partake in those rights that you've been fighting for. You have 100 years worth of experience helping to move our nation forward, and in one of the biggest fights that we face, one that will determine not just the quality of our children's lives, but whether or not our children even survive, our nation needs you again, and that's what I wanted to talk about. Nearly 1 month ago, the unspeakable tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary in Newtown, Connecticut tore at our hearts and shocked America's conscience. A school should be one of the safest places our children ever go to. And as a parent, this kind of tragedy is really just unthinkable. And yet, as horrific as the Sandy Hook shooting was, we experience that level of violence and worse every day in America. Every day of the year, 365 days a year, an average of 33 Americans are murdered with guns, and many of them are children. That's 33 families that whose suffering doesn't get as much media attention, but whose loss is just as real and just as tragic and just as devastating. It is really sad. It is just unconscionable. And my friends from around the world just cannot understand why we put up with it. Now, in recent days, we've heard encouraging words from Washington about finally taking action to tackle the epidemic of gun violence. But what we need from Washington, what we must demand, is action. Easy to talk, but we need stand-up people who really make a difference. In a little more than a week, President Obama will take the oath of office for his second term, and unless we change course and reduce firearm violence, during the next 4 years of the Obama's second administration, some 48,000 Americans will be killed with guns. 48,000 Americans killed with guns. Just think about that. 12,000 a year, 33 a day. And that's why we helped organize Mayors Against Illegal Guns, and why we're asking every American to stand up with us and demand a plan from Washington. Not just nice words that we're going to do something. Okay, what's the something, and when are you going to get it passed? When we need legislation or sign an executive order if that's what it takes? When are you going to do something to stop? We don't need words, we need to stop this craziness. Now, Mayors Against Illegal Guns is a national bipartisan coalition whose membership now stands at more than 800 mayors, and that includes nearly 100 mayors who've joined, incidentally, since Sandy Hook, and more than 900,000 people who've signed our online petition. And I want to encourage all of you to visit the website demandaplan.org, where you can watch videos of victims and parents who've lost children to gun violence telling their stories, as well as learn how you can join our movement. And I'm going to take a few minutes of your time, if I may, to outline 6 immediate common sense steps Washington can take right now to reduce our bloodshed, the bloodshed produced by illegal guns in our nation. First, let me talk about Congress. Congress should pass the Fix Gun Checks Act, which would require a criminal background check for all gun sales, including private party sales of guns at gun shows and online. We have a law, a federal law, that says you have to have a background check to see whether the buyer has a psychiatric problem, substance abuse problems, a minor, has a criminal record, whatever. Those people, by federal law, aren't allowed to buy guns. But 40% of the guns are not sold by gun dealers. 99% of the gun dealers actually follow the law. But 40% of the guns are sold outside of the system of gun stores selling to customers who come in the door. Those 40% are sold either online or at gun shows. And the background checks don't apply in the federal law to those. Having a law where 40% of what happens isn't covered means you might as well not have a law at all, because anybody that wants to avoid the law just has to go over. And the fact that it's 40% tells you just how easy this is. This bill would also require states and federal government agencies to send all necessary records on felons, domestic abusers, the seriously mentally ill, and other dangerous people to the database that is used in background checks, and it's called the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. Having a database without any data is meaningless. Having a requirement that you have to use the database but not for 40% of the sales is meaningless. We've got to change this. Not hard to do. Makes common sense. Is consistent with the laws that are already on the books, where Congress was so proud that they passed it and they used to brag about it. We're stopping the gun violence. We're doing something. Yeah, well, you're not really doing something. So now's time to let's stop us. We're not going to be so gullible the next time. We want a law that really is enforceable and does the job. If you want to take credit for passing the law, Congress, and signing the law, Mr. President, let's make sure the law does what you're purporting that it will do. Second, it is time to pass an enforceable and effective assault weapons ban, one that isn't riddled with loopholes and easily evaded. Congress should also ban the high-capacity magazines that have been used again and again in mass shootings. These weapons and ammunition can be used to kill large numbers of people quickly, and regulating them certainly falls within the bounds of the Second Amendment. You know, assault weapons aren't used in most of those 33 murders every day. Those are generally handguns. But assault weapons and high-capacity magazines are used when you have the mass shootings. And to have those in the hands of the public is not what the Founding Fathers envisioned. And the Supreme Court has said you can have reasonable restrictions. And we used to have a law. As a matter of fact, Vice President Joe Biden led the committee that got Congress to pass an assault weapons ban. Unfortunately, it was passed for 10 or 15 years and had a date where it just stopped and had to be renewed, and Congress never renewed it. It's time to renew that law. And third, the President and Congress should work together to make gun trafficking a federal crime. Right now, it's not. Here in New York State, we actually have some of the toughest gun laws in the country, and I was pleased to see Governor Cuomo, after working with our administration, wants to make those laws even tougher. But it's too easy to buy a gun and drive across a border into another state. So what we do in New York State really doesn't have the impact that it should have because other states don't do the same thing. This is a national problem, and no matter what we do at the local level in our city or in our state, we can make it better, and we are. Murder rate in New York City is lower than any other major city in the country, but it's still too high. And we've got to do something about that, and that's the responsibility of our national government. At the same time, what I just talked about was things that Congress can do. But the federal government has three branches: the courts, Congress, and the president. And I have been very strong. I endorse the president, but that doesn't mean that I don't think I should press him to do the following, because the president can really make a big difference here. At the same time, the three steps that Obama has taken, there are three steps that Obama can take on his own to address gun violence. First, the president should order all federal agencies to submit the relevant data they have to the National Gun Background Check database. I said before, a lot of the data doesn't get into the database. The president can't, by executive order, force states to put the data in. But the federal government, the Army, the military, and all sorts of parts of the federal government, they work for the president. And all he's got to do is sign an executive order and say, you work for me, this is what you're going to do, and do it right now. And second, the president should direct the Justice Department, they work for him as well, to step up its prosecution of gun criminals who try to buy guns. This is a federal felony. Last year, there was, during 2010, 76,000 cases were referred by the FBI to the Justice Department where people had lied about whether they had a criminal record to buy a gun. Do you know how many of those 76,000 cases the Justice Department prosecuted? 44. 44 out of 76,000. The president can tell his Justice Department, I want you to start doing what's right. And third, the president should make it a top priority to fill the vacancy at the top of the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which has not had a director in 6 years. Now, I know Congress sometimes, they won't approve the people that the president wants to have as his secretaries or advisors or running his agencies. But there are provisions where the president can get around Congress's refusal. You can make an appointment when Congress is not in session. And I urge it's done all the time, and I urge the president to do it in this case. Now, soon you'll be traveling to your organization's birthplace, Washington, D.C., to celebrate the 100 years of sisterhood and service. And while you're there, make your voices heard in the White House and in the halls of Congress. Demand that our leaders act to reduce the bloodshed caused by illegal guns in our nation. This is one of the most urgent fights America faces, but it is a fight I know we can win. And just as you have so many times before, I hope that Delta Sigma Theta Sorority will stand up with us and work with us until we do it again. Now, I have a proclamation for you. You want to receive the proclamation? Okay. This is a proclamation. Mayor gets a chance to do these. It looks like I wrote it by hand. I'm sure you believe that. But it is a proclamation in recognition of Delta Sigma Theta's sorority century of service. And it reads in part, the Delta Sigma Theta sorority is a terrific example of how an inspired group of women can make a positive difference in the lives of the people they are called to serve. And we applaud National President Cynthia Butler McIntyre and all of the sorority members for their dedication to public service, and we look forward to their continued efforts to build a stronger New York City and a better world. And now, therefore, I, Michael R. Bloomberg, Mayor of the City of New York, hereby proclaim Thursday, January 10th, 2013, in the City of New York as Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Day. This really is a fight that we can win, and it's a fight that we have to win. It is our children that are getting killed every single day. So I urge you, don't get pushed aside. Don't just listen to the words. Our police commissioner is here. He has 35,000 cops, and he's brought down the murder rate in this city so low that it's getting to the point where it's hard to measure compared to other cities. But it's still too high. We had 418 murders last year. Let me put that in perspective. If you compared it to other cities, we'd have thousands, 3,000 or 4,000 murders if we had their murder rate. But it's still 418 too many. We're committed in this city to continue to make every child in this city safe, and we need your help to do it across the country. Thank you, and God bless.
Please, let's give a warm thank you to Mayor Bloomberg, our host today in New York City.